Ever wonder about what others are thinking about you? Well, you're not alone. The behavioral concept referring to one person's perception of another, which directly impacts and reshapes the way an individual behaves, consciously and subconsciously, all goes back to a concept referred to as the looking glass self theory, or the me, myself, and I theory. According to author and Dr. Joseph Murphy, you actually create in your own experience what you would think and feel about the other person. The thought you have about the other person is your thought because you are thinking it. Dating back to nearly 200 years ago, American sociopsychologist Charles Horton Cooley developed his theory that all people are a mere reflection of each other, that your peers and administrators and guardians and coaches all impact the way you view yourself, the way you strive to be your best, and most importantly, the expectations you set for yourself. Author John V. Canfield sets the question for us: what is the quality of those who in an everyday, unexceptional way are self-aware? Think of it like this. In a high school setting of about 1,500 different faces walking past you daily, the opinion of others may be a bit underwhelming, considering the large population and impassiveness of the large crowd every day. In a smaller setting, however, in a setting with about 500 or even 250 faces that roam the hall every day, there's a greater likelihood of your peers to comment and pay attention to you, what you wear, what you eat, and your presence overall. So why then, you might ask, do I still wonder every day in a setting like this, what do people think of me? Most Americans, however, will generally deny any association with the feeling of lack of fulfillment. In other words, we deny any unsatisfied feeling of acceptance we seem to feel. In response to this denial, author John V. Canfield states, the brain submits electrochemical changes which result in an awareness of the external world. This awareness may be conscious or subconscious, meaning we may or may not even realize what we are experiencing as a result of such self-denial. But how did this all come to be? Surprisingly enough, most often than not, we as humans are in fact subconsciously following the 3 steps of the looking glass self-theory. Number 1 being the imagination of our own appearance from another person's perspective. In the first step, we simply formulate an idea about how we think we look physically to another person. In the second, we begin to imagine the reaction and judgment of the other person's perception of us. We imagine their thoughts and conclusions about what type of person they perceive us to be, although we ourselves know exactly who we are. Or do we? The third step we encounter is our own personal reaction to steps 1 and 2. We either choose to or not to interact with a person, assume what they think of us or what kind of impression we made, and automatically jump to a conclusion about what or how a person thinks about us. As author Marilyn Sorensen states, while self-esteem can never be fully restored to its original potential, it can be repaired and become fully operational, allowing for a meaningful and happy life. We as humans strive for acceptance. Humans want to be wanted, whether in a social aspect such as a friend group, a romantic aspect such as a partner, or simply a feeling of self-fulfillment and satisfaction to the person you are to yourself and to others every day. So why then do we feel so limited and close-minded about the society currently withholding all members of ours and previous generations? Why do we think we know more about a person or what they know about us than we actually do? Dr. Joseph Murphy states, as you would want people to think about you, think you about them in like manner. This all refers to a term called the limit of socialization, or the inability of humans as members of society and of Earth to completely understand and develop a concrete explanation for the reason behind why and how society came to be, how it is right now, and why we all behave the way we do in it. Limitless. We are in fact not a limitless society entirely. With pressure coming from not only school and public settings, but social media all day and every day, the expectations we have subconsciously set for ourselves and what we expect to see on our timelines really could say a lot about where the turn of our generation went wrong, or did it? Dr. Murphy also adds, what someone else says cannot really annoy or irritate you unless you permit it to disturb you. The only path by which another person can upset you is through your own thought. We have seen and heard more than enough times that social media consumes our everyday lives, through in and throughout. But without the effect of these media devices, social relations may not be as easygoing as they seem. Saying this might actually counteract a lot of the ways we've been trained to think. We've been trained to now believe that with the change and reliance on social media that we all have, that it has done nothing good for us but make us worthless and stupid and physically incapable to interact with our peers. We hear this endlessly. So as a result, any negative thought that enters our minds feels real, so there's an impulse to accept it as reality. Author S.J. Scott states, thus evolved the negativity bias, our tendency to react to negative stimuli more intensely than positive. Negative stimuli produce more neural activity than do equally intense positive ones, meaning the lasting impact negative comments leave on our minds are much stronger and severe than positive comments. But why then would it make sense that with the use of our cell phones, we're not only developing more rapidly along with the shift of society, but could be changing our futures for the better as well as our perceptions of one another? Author John C. Maxwell states that awareness changes everything. As soon as we become aware that some of our limitations are artificial limitations, we can begin to overcome many of them, meaning, although we are constantly filled with thoughts and opinions of others, we aren't unable to overcome them with positivity. I mean, look at the motivation that comes from the impact those we see on our timelines every day have on us. We see fitness posts, trending vegan and health lifestyles. These all impact our minds in ways we don't always realize. Sure, we see that blogger living in Hawaii with her vegan happy lifestyle. That influences us. When triggered with this feeling of motivation and self-confidence, the brain raises the level of neurotransmitter signals, specifically endorphins and motivation hormones such as dopamine, epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, and serotonin, which play a major role in the impact that those we see and look up to every day have on our personal hopes and desires. We remember that we too can achieve a happy, healthy, successful life. The ability to radiate this energy onto our peers is how these negative perceptional theories will vanish. As pronounced in section 7 verse 12 of the book of Matthew, always treat others as you would like to be treated. From there, are we still worried about what others are thinking about us, or more about what we think about ourselves? This all goes back to the limit of socialization theory I mentioned earlier. Without the inability to capture each other's reasonings for behavior and personalities, the world could be a perfect place, and how disastrous would that be? As they say, those who render human life so daringly nevertheless hold out great hope for it. John B. Canfield. As an infant, we go through what is known as the pre-play stage. This is when we are at our, surprisingly enough, most impressionable age. Infants only carry the visible capability to directly mimic and mirror the actions of others, as they are unable to show their ability to take on a role for themselves. After this stage, in childhood and adolescence, individuals undergo a period of self-development called the play stage. During this period, children experience the new ability to observe the roles of their most familiar figures, parents, siblings, etc., and begin to form a personality for themselves. If you think about it, we've relied on others to help shape our personalities and identities long before we were ever able to realize. Since our most impressionable age, we've looked to our authority figures to set the basis for the consequences of our actions, good or bad. Now that we live to make our own decisions, we do nothing but deny that we could ever possibly be shaped by the impressions of those around us. But is that true? We as humans seek love, compassion, and acceptance from our peers. We run on feeling, emotion, and thought. But is that enough to get us by? Do we impact the way others feel about themselves by our own actions? Well, the answer is yes. Do we ever stop considering what we look like to others? Will we ever accept who we know we are enough to stop thinking about who we should be? To stop thinking that we need to dress a certain way on a certain day, to smile or not smile at someone because of the fear of what they'll think? To stop thinking about the classes you should take or the level of politeness you have to maintain toward your peers and administrators so they'll think that you're a good student, that you're a good person. But when you stop and think about it, when did you have to start pretending? Or why?